Crimea's Tatar minorities were some of the most outspoken opponents of Russia's annexation of Ukraine's Black Sea Peninsula.
Russia has now banned some of their leaders from office, and the Tatar community says they live in a climate of fear and intimidation.
VOA's Daniel Schearf recently visited Crimea a year after the Russian takeover. He spoke to me about the apparent abductions and murders of Tatar activists.
Since Russia took over Crimea, authorities have banned some Tatar leaders and pressured its executive body, the Mejlis, out of its offices, says activist Zair Smedlia, making it hard to operate.
Over the past year, we saw murders, kidnappings of activists, searching of madrasas and mosques, even the houses of the activists, and illegal arrests and detentions. All this is being done to Crimean Tatars, like the rest of the population, to instill fear.
You spent time with some of these Tatars and got a chance to get their stories, and a lot of them that you talked to talked about these abductions and killings of their people after Russia took over. What is going on?
Yeah, very disturbing trend since Russia took over. The Crimean Tatars, of course, have a very bad history with Russia. In the 1940s, Joseph Stalin deported all of the Crimean Tatars, nearly 200,000 people, to Siberia for allegedly conspiring with the Nazis during World War II. Some did fight with the Nazis, but many also fought with the Soviets. But it seemed like it was, fairly an excuse to get rid of them essentially and take over their land. They were allowed to go back to Crimea in the 1990s, so it's fairly new that the community has reestablished itself in Crimea. But since Russia took over the peninsula last year, there have been dozens of cases of disappearances.
Abdurrashid Japarov says his son Islam was a good athlete and student, but unlike himself, was no activist and had no interest in politics. The 19-year-old was abducted in September, along with his 23-year-old cousin, shoved into a car, according to witnesses, by men in black uniforms. Neither has been seen since, and no one has been arrested for their kidnapping. Japarov believes Russia's security services were involved. The reason, he thinks, his work as a former deputy in the Crimean Tatar Mejlis, a representative body that addressed the community's concerns.
It
was prepared for a long time. They prepared it thoroughly. It was not the work of 2 or 3 men. It was systematic.
Now, if this, Daniel, is indeed persecution of this group, as it appears to be, what's the reason behind this?
The overall impression that we got from them is that they feel that this is a systematic attempt to instill fear upon the Crimean Tatar community, to basically try and keep them silent and to keep them under control. There was a lot of concern by Russia that the Crimean Tatars might be rising up against Russian rule because they were the most outspoken group against Russia taking back the Crimean Peninsula.
And Daniel, what was it like for you going to Crimea and having to approach these people who have lost loved ones? It's very difficult to do when you're approaching a family in grief. So how did you deal with that?
Well, certainly whenever you're trying to interview a relative of someone who's been killed or disappeared, you have to approach it in a very sensitive way. I mean, this is a very tragic circumstance, and you want to tell their story, you want to hear their story, and make sure that their voice gets out there, that their opinion is heard, especially in an environment where there is a crackdown on freedom of speech among that community in particular, the Crimean Tatars. But actually the Crimean Tatar, the relatives and the leaders that we spoke to, have been interviewed on numerous occasions, and although Crimean Tatar journalists and local Crimean journalists have been subjected to pressure by the Russian authorities, it seems like foreign journalists are still able to get access to that community, which is a very good thing, even though their own media is being very much pressured to keep quiet.
VOA's Daniel Schearf reporting on Crimea. In another turn of events there, a television station dedicated to the Tatar community has gone off the air after being denied a renewal of its broadcast license.